Hey, welcome back, Deadball Dancing. We took a little bit of a sabbatical last week. Apologies for that. We had some stuff on deck. It just didn't get done. It's
Yeah,
spring training season here, so
Rick's
yeah,
Rick's
it
being
just didn't
Rick's
happen.
being yeah Rick's being very kind. I decided to take the first vacation that I took, and I don't know how long. Miss a million other things, but man, it is good to be back. Long time listener, by the way, Rick. Really quickly before we start, my friend John Mel's daughter just got married this past weekend in DC. I was there in attendance, so congratulations. Just want to give him a shout out as he's a big fan and he asked me to do it. So, um,
Hell yeah.
shout out to the family, man. Let's get into it now.
We'll be back with some kind of our normal top 25 on cycle here, but we are just ahead of tournament season, just ahead of the time when people who aren't addicted to college basketball start to see bracket predictions kind of for the first time as
Yeah.
ESPN pushes it really hard.
Yep.
So we wanted to give you kind of a look at our bracket and kind of our thinking. We'll get back to more of a traditional ish top 25. Justin and I need to talk a little bit about what that's going to look like. But this is our bracketology episode before everything but the 6
Yeah.
Atlantic Sun games that have already played.
Yeah.
Um, uh, unless you have an Atlantic Sun team winning, I don't think we missed a whole lot from a bracketology standpoint. Obviously, one team will get in.
No. Yeah. Don't have an Atlantic Sun team winning. I didn't even realize they were playing. So I'm a really bad co-host here with you. But now that I know, I'm paying attention to it. First of all, who do you got winning the ASUN?
I have North Alabama, the 2 seed.
Yep. Yep. That's who I have as well.
Yeah,
Really like.
Lipscomb just. I mean, not to get way too far ahead. Lipscomb's one of my first 4 out.
Yeah.
They've looked good. North Alabama plays better on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
So I think that's the way to go.
Yeah. I like the way that the bracket was designed too. After you kind of walked me through it today, I looked into it. It's literally just like a funnel.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's such a
So awesome.
their thing is they go first
Yeah.
and they just kind of fill the calendar with games and
Yeah.
I really enjoy the format.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. But where do we want to start? I mean, do we just start straight away with the 1 seeds? Do we start with the champ? Where you want to go first?
Yeah, I think that's the stuff people care about, right? Let's because of how our champs fall out, let's cover these 1 seeds and back our way into the championship, and then we'll talk about the bubble teams that people seem to love so much.
Yeah, no doubt. So it looks like we were just talking right before the show started. Looks like we're literally the same, with the exception of the 2 teams that you and I have disagreed on the entire season, and we'll continue to disagree on. So I went Auburn, Houston, Tennessee, and Duke, and I was kind of battling myself between throwing another SEC team in at the 1 slot when I thought that there were a couple other really good Big 10 and Big 12 at-large teams that I think could have stolen that number 1. I was flirting with the idea of Iowa State again because they look really sharp. I was flirting with the idea of literally putting Maryland at a 1 slot, given how strong they've looked as well. But ultimately, I think Tennessee has looked a little bit more of a powerhouse than anybody else that I would have slotted in there. Defensive side of the ball, they're monstrous. So that kind of what swayed me for the Tennessee spot. I think Auburn and Houston have looked the strongest the entire year. No real shocker there. So that Tennessee slot for me was one that was biggest in question. Now, I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on the Clemson Duke argument because as of late, Duke, in my opinion, has just looked almost unbeatable. But Clemson has looked pretty sharp as well. I thought they looked a little weak versus SMU, but season to date, I don't actually see anything wrong with them at a 1 spot. So before we dive into the details, anything that you wanted to high level go over?
Yeah, just a couple notes. If you're not watching this live, Duke just throttled Wake Forest about 30 minutes ago, beat them by about 30.
Yeah.
And I know I put these graphics in here just to highlight how similar we are.
Yeah.
But our top 4 is actually very different. So I wanted to call that out. I have in order: Houston, Auburn, Tennessee, Clemson.
Gotcha. And I got
Yours,
Duke,
yours is
Houston, Auburn, Tennessee. Interesting. Okay.
so
Yeah.
same one seeds for the most part.
Yep.
Obviously, the Clemson Duke flip flop. We could split hairs on that later, but within our top four, very different views on who's going to pull the number one overall, and then how those seeds fall out. Really, for bracketology, it really doesn't matter who the 2, 3, and 4 are. All anyone's ever going to remember is who's the number one overall.
Yeah.
Anyone who says like, "Oh, I want the three number one," no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't.
The number one overall seeds pulls the easiest quote unquote bracket, right?
Yeah.
For the most part. And I just noticed how different they were when you said that and dove into it. I don't even really have a problem with you putting Houston at number one overall seed. They looked terrifying. They looked terrifying when we saw them in person. They looked terrifying versus Cincinnati this past weekend. I have them actually at my 2 slot, so literally just one behind my number one overall, which I believe is Duke. That's a really good call out on your part. So just for the listeners, I got Duke at the number one overall, and Rick's got Houston at the number one overall.
Well, and you look across the board, and we don't have Duke or Houston sitting in that championship box.
Right.
And I'm not sure how much went into yours. Mine was a nightmare to try to fill out 76 teams.
It was.
But for me, I just think that Auburn is the most well-rounded team come tournament time. Right now, I think Houston is a better team. They are 1 seed higher for me.
Yeah.
But Auburn, I think, beats Houston on a neutral court more times than not. And so for me, that's kind of where it went. Now, I have to say, we'll pop in on our Elite Eight, but
yes.
Auburn for me is my champion.
Yeah.
Both from a basketball standpoint, but also from a betting value standpoint.
Yeah.
And you know me, I'm always trying to make a couple bucks.
Yeah, and I think come tournament time, I think both of our number one, like just for again, how Rick and I do things are way different than how the committee does things and how the AP does things, right? Like we pride ourselves on actually watching basketball, both sides of the ball, the intangibles, right? The strength of schedule. And that's how we come up with our top 25 in our tournaments, right? So Auburn is most likely going to have the number one overall seed when the tourney teams, or when the I'm sorry, what do you call them? The committee comes out with their bracket, right? Like that's completely realistic. But right now, what we're saying is that Duke and Houston are playing better basketball than Auburn, right? So that's why we're giving them that nod. Now, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't want to get too far ahead, but Auburn's almost a no-brainer champion for me. I mean, number 4 in field goals made per game, number 3 in points, number 4 in scoring margin. Their assist-to-turnover ratio is 1.9, which is 3rd in the nation, right? They're only allowing 9 assists defensively per game, which is number 1 in the nation, right? Opponents are only shooting 29% from 3. That's number 8 in the nation. Like, when you look at a holistic basketball team, like Auburn is checking every box possible, right? But the thing that makes me nervous is like Florida got them, and all it takes is one game, right? Who was the other team? They only lost twice. Who was the other team that beat them?
I can't remember.
But it doesn't matter, right? Because it's like all that matters is the game in front of you, and Auburn has proved itself in that Florida game that they could be susceptible to teams that can shoot at a high clip. Right. So I think that's the reason why I have them slotted slightly below both Duke and Houston in terms of my number 1 seeds. Because out of the number 1 seeds, I do think they are the second most vulnerable if they don't have it together. With that being said, they freaking have it together right now. So it's going to be tough to beat them.
Duke got them. It's poetry, folks. It's poetry. Okay, sports is art.
And I want you before we even continue, I want you to go over on our note section right now, and I want you to read what the note I have in the champion box is. Read it to the people, please.
Auburn champion. Duke loses to Auburn in championship game.
Like it couldn't be set up for a more perfect ending, right? Like Duke's the team that's handed him one of 2 losses all season, and in a revenge game, tight game in the title, right? Like, yeah. Anyway, sorry, I don't want to get
you can hear the CBS music playing behind the
Oh my
narrative.
god, dude, I'm getting chills, dude. I love talking about this. My god, it's yeah. So very very cool.
Well, the other thing we want to take a look at was kind of like a dark horse, right? If you strip away the teams we just talked about, if you strip away everyone's favorite picks to go to the Elite Eight, to the Final Four, who's kind of left standing there that from a strictly basketball standpoint is capable of winning a championship? I don't want to hear in the friggin' comments, oh, that team's never going to make it. Maryland can't beat Duke. I know, I get it. Okay. This is a team who plays good, solid basketball,
Yeah,
who could win a championship. And
yeah,
so for me, that's the Terps. And Maryland's kind of come on as of late. They've looked really, really good.
yep,
Unfortunately, it hasn't turned into as many wins as they would like against
yep,
quadrant 1 teams. But
yep.
when your entire schedule in the Big Ten is those teams, yeah, you kind of shit out of luck sometimes. They will make the tournament.
Yep.
So for me, if a couple things break the right way and they continue playing good, solid Maryland basketball, the tournament is not the Big Ten regular season. The tournament is not an early season tournament. The big dance is exactly that. Crazy shit can happen. And the only way to protect yourself against crazy shit is to play good fundamental basketball on both sides of the court. So for me, when I'm looking for a dark horse, Maryland kind of fits that bill. And, they're not going to world beat any of these massive teams. But, if you stick Maryland in, I can't remember where I have them slotted.
You have them at a 5. You had them
At a
at a 5.
5 seed.
Yep.
You avoid that big upset against the 12, and then you kind of just cruise for a little bit. Maybe some of
Yeah.
the big dogs lose, but if I'm Maryland in the Final Four, or I'm a team playing against Maryland in the Final Four, I'm uncomfortable. And for me, that's what dark horse means.
I love the pick, and we talked about Maryland in our 217 episode and just how well rounded they were on both sides of the ball. And I just mentioned Auburn, right, and how Auburn really puts it together on both sides when they're playing right. I mean, they have a top perennially across the board 5 to 10 scoring offense, assist offense in the country. They're well balanced, like 5 dudes averaging over 13 a game. Defensive side of the ball, they have a 37th best in free throws allowed, like just outside the top 50 in scoring. So it's like you talk about these teams that can put it together on both sides of the ball. And I don't know. I love the way they've looked all season. I actually have them at a 3 slot. So I don't even know if I can call them a dark horse anymore. I think they're just a really, really good basketball team that hasn't gotten the respect from the media that they deserve. And for that reason, I fully agree they're a dark horse, and I really love your pick. I mean, dude, they have a chance, right? If they flip the right bracket and they go up against, let's say they're in Tennessee's 1 slot bracket, right? Where Tennessee has been vulnerable to falling in love with a 3-point and getting down early, right? Saw it in the Florida game, right? I mean, they could come out and be in the Final Four like without a blink of an eye. So sorry, I don't want to take over your dark horse.
Oh no, all good. 14th in Ken Palm, 75-1 to win the championship.
It's not unrealistic it's just not unrealistic. I have Maryland at number 8 overall. Just in terms of the whole tourney. So love that.
2
team.
spots up in Ken Palm. Tell me about your team.
Missouri.
Missouri's the 12. Missouri's the 12 in Ken Palm right now.
Kansas, Vanderbilt, Florida, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Georgia, and I think I just beat Alabama by like 15 or like 20 or something like that. I don't know. It took a tough loss just yesterday, I think, against Vanderbilt, but Vanderbilt's going to be another team that I talk about here in a second. They can play the hell out of the offensive side of the ball, dude. First in free throws made, second in free throws attempted, 4th in overall shooting efficiency, 9th in effective field goal percentage, 9th in total field goal percentage shooting. They are 2nd in steals per game, and they're 5th in how often in terms of frequency by percentage wild stat. They steal the ball when the offense brings the ball down the court. 15% of the time that the offense brings the ball down the court, the ball is getting stolen. That's a wild stat. I think they're fast. I think they're well coached. They're disciplined. They defend without fouling. And they've proven to me this year that they can beat those big teams. We just said it, right? We just said Florida. I think they only lost to Tennessee by like 3 or 4. They just drubbed Bama, drubbed Kansas, right? Ole Miss. They fly around the defensive side of the ball. They fly up and down the court. They get straight to the basket. They're shooting like 30 free throws a game, making 21. And in a tournament where we know it's going to come down to free throw shooting at the end of the game, being able to lock in at the end of the game on the defensive side of the ball, I think Missouri has done a great job showing that. And if they, again, it's all about seeding and where they end up, right? But if they pull the right bracket, like I can see them very easily marching to the Final Four. I think it's going to be a long shot that they do it. I think there's a lot of good teams from the 1 to 8 slot that have a chance to knock them out. But if they play Missouri brand basketball that they've been playing all of SEC play, I think they're like 11-6 in SEC, which if I told you that at the beginning of the season, you would have scoffed at me. They're gonna have a shot. So I have them at the 12th overall seed in the tournament at a number 3 seed. So hell of a team, man. Really like Missouri.
I have them as a 6.
6.
But yeah, I mean nothing you said is invalidated by any of that. So
yeah, no, agreed.
All right, let's hit the big conferences, just so that the casual fans know who we're taking to cut down the nets in the big conference tournaments.
Yep.
Most of them won't even start for another 10 days or so yet.
And a half or whatever it is.
I'm gonna do mine because I have fewer big conferences than you do.
I love that call out today, man. Go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, so in my eyes, there's only 3 real basketball conferences left. I have Michigan State winning the Big Ten, Auburn winning the SEC, and Houston winning the Big 12. I'll give you my ACC champ when you talk about how ACC is a conference. But why don't you go ahead?
We agree on those 3. I went Michigan State, Auburn, and Houston. I actually was toying with that Houston pick for a second too. It was just crossing my brain.
I had Wisconsin in as the Big Ten champ for like 2 weeks as we were working on that template.
Yeah.
And I deleted them and I added them and I deleted them and I added them. So I know what's going to happen. They're either going to lose their first game against like a Northwestern that somehow gets through to the quarters, or they're winning, and I'll be wrong about Michigan State.
Yeah, fair. The same way I feel about the Boilermakers. So yeah, Michigan State, Auburn, Houston. I agree with you on the ACC, but let me get to that in a second. I think the Big East you have to say is a conference now. I mean, it has the last 2 champions, right? I don't like UConn. I think UConn's probably the worst back-to-back champion I've ever seen in my life. But I have, just to give everyone an idea, I have 4 Big East teams making the tournament, right? That's nothing to scoff at. And I have St. John's winning the Big East. I actually originally had St. John's at a 1 slot, given how well they played, but moved them down to a 2 because I was a little more confident in Tennessee's play than St. John's as of late. So I have St. John's winning the Big East. The ACC, it's not a conference, but my national champion runner-up is in the ACC, so I had to depict that they were somehow still relevant. I got Duke winning the ACC, and just for clarity, I have actually 5 ACC teams making the tournament. So just wanted to make sure that I called that out. The 5 teams, if we're curious, is Duke, Clemson. I believe I have North Carolina. I have SMU, and what was the 5th? Louisville. So there's still kind of a conference.
Yeah, it's mostly in jest, right? So
Mm,
obviously, I have Clemson winning the ACC.
Yep.
I have 5 Big East teams in the field.
Interesting. For
So
you.
yeah, I talk some shit, but I am going to talk about I'm going to talk about a couple of them here on this show.
Okay.
I also have St. John's winning the Big East,
Okay.
but they've been good for
Ish.
big chunks of the year.
Yeah.
So it's hard to
You got him at a 4 seed.
not give them some of that grace when it is a power conference in basketball, and UConn has been the class of the entire sport for you know at least the last 2 seasons. So
Hater. Yeah.
definitely something there. Moving down into like smaller conferences,
Yeah.
I did want to just talk A10 very briefly.
Yep.
Uh, it looks like the only call now. VCU kind of world beat. I don't really see any way VCU doesn't win the A10. I know you have some more thoughts, so I won't wax too poetic on VCU, but I just want to say that we were out ahead of VCU. The A10 has some good teams, and no one had VCU winning. But we were on that really early.
You. That was your mid major on notice, and I believe mine was, or one we're going to get into here pretty shortly as well. I actually have George Mason. I know VCU just beat George Mason. I like the way that George Mason plays basketball. I think I apologize. I think they could string together a set of wins to win the conference tournament. I don't think they are going to make it far in the tournament, and I think that there's going to be 2 Atlantic 10 teams in the tournament. So, like your VCU call a lot, high probability that they win that regular season and conference tournament. But I think George Mason's got a couple tricks under their sleeves. They won like 14, 15 games in a row this season. So I think they have shown they can string stuff together. And the A10 looks good overall. So
And you never know when the Bonnies are going to pop up, man.
yeah. I'm a little bummed about my Dayton pick. Honestly, man, I really wish they would have been a little better this season. They looked so
Off
good.
here.
Yeah, so good early on. But yeah, I got George Mason in the A10. Talk to me about the
Jump
big
to
one.
MVC really quick. Drake is a team I've talked about a lot this year. Drake looks really bad. Drake has kind of gone flat and lost and almost lost some conference games.
Yep.
Drake will win the MVC,
Mhm.
to be clear. But I'm not worried about a 12 seed Drake. I'm not worried about a 14 seed Drake anymore like I was before. They really have not looked great.
And you and I both have Drake in the tournament. I have them actually at a 28 overall at a 7 seed, and you have them at 26 overall at a 7 seed. So you and I both we're thinking the same way about that. I'm going to go a different direction, and I'm going to go down to the Southland, where early on my mid-major to watch didn't look that great. But man, do they look good now. Whew. McNeese State, man. The boys are playing some basketball. 15th overall scoring defense, 23rd overall in scoring margin. They are by far and away the best team in that conference. And they've looked like so sharp to the point where I think those really close losses to Bama and Mississippi State early in the season, if they pull one of those 2 teams or a really bad like Big Ten team or low end SEC team, I like them a lot, dude. McNeese State is a very good basketball team. And to give you an idea, I have them at the 25th overall seed in the nation at a 7 seed. So,
Oh wow.
yeah.
I'm not as hot on them as you. I was about to echo everything you said and be like they're going to be the most dangerous 12 seed in the tournament.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're way hotter than I am on them.
I mean, 12 is much more realistic, right? I mean, 12 is completely realistic for McNeese, but they've sure looked like a 7 to me. So I'm going to put them there,
Well, and I kind of feel like hold on, let me look at our show notes really quick and make sure I'm not pulling too far ahead.
No, you're good. You're good.
I kind of feel like Yeah, I was about to talk about Gonzaga anyway. I kind of feel like the reason why McNeese is not a 7, right? And it's not a critique of Justin's ranking.
No, you're good.
It's we know, right, as basketball fans that mine and Justin's rankings don't reflect reality because college basketball doesn't reflect what happens on the court. So yeah, I
Beautiful.
have no problem with McNeese at a 7.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the whole reason we started doing our own rankings and the reason we approach the show
Yeah.
the way we have.
Yep.
And I have a habit to write my notes like I'm writing a thesis paper. So mine says the WCC, Gonzaga, and inevitability.
I know
Right?
what you
It's
mean.
like
And
I'm
the minute you
writing
said
for
it, I knew what you
research
meant.
grants over here. Like,
Yeah. Minute you said it, I knew what you meant. Right. It's like,
yeah, and it's the same thing. It's two sides of the same coin, right? The reason why McNeese is not a 7 is the same reason Gonzaga makes the tournament if they lose the friggin' conference. And it's media bias, right? And it's being able to give people the stories they want. Everyone loves a Cinderella, but if your favorite team never makes the tournament, no one gives a shit about the Cinderella. Why isn't my team in there?
yeah.
Right? And we talked a lot this season about blue bloods and new bloods, and teams like Gonzaga who, okay, yes, they beat the tar out of San Francisco, right? And it kind of stamped it for me. Like Gonzaga's going to be in there, win or lose.
Yeah.
But when did it stop being like, well, Gonzaga should beat the tar out of San Francisco?
Correct.
Like I was watching that game hoping they would lose because of the intrigue from a story standpoint.
Correct.
And it's
Are
like,
they going to make it?
no, yeah, like Gonzaga out recruits San Francisco. Gonzaga is a real school for basketball, right? And San Francisco is not. Now they had a great year, but like when did it become like winning by 14 against a school like that is fine for Gonzaga because they're a blue blood.
Right.
That shit drives me crazy because
I know.
it was so hard for me to cut 20 teams from my list of 90
I know.
because like a
Yeah.
lot of these teams deserve to go.
Yeah.
And when there's teams that are artificially inflated by the talking heads on ESPN and the friggin' AP poll for no reason, it's like, okay, well, I know Gonzaga's in the field. Whether or not they're in my top 70 is irrelevant.
Yep. Correct.
Like if I want to be taken seriously, I have to at least put them in my tournament. And that's not right. It's not how it should be.
No,
That's my
totally
mini
agree.
rant.
No, and I agree. I mean, I've been frustrated about that the whole season. And by the way, San Francisco beat them this year. Just as a reminder for everybody, lost to Oregon State, Memphis, USF. I'm looking. We're going to get to it in a second, but I'm looking at those middle two columns that you guys are seeing right now, and I'm seeing some teams that I would in that F4 out that we're going to get into that probably in my eyes deserve a slot over Gonzaga, but I put Gonzaga in anyways. I disrespected Gonzaga. I put Gonzaga at 9. Rick has them at a 6, and Gonzaga probably will be a 6, right? But because I don't think they deserve to be a 6, I'm going to put them at a 9. And I think they're going to lose the first couple games as well. But you are right. I mean, we both knew, regardless of if they ended up third in that conference behind St. Mary's and USF, they would be in because of the inherent bias that the AP and the coaches poll has, right? So they're not in the AP top 25, right? I don't believe they're in Ken Palm top 25 anymore. I could be wrong. They are fucking number 11. Wow. Holy shit. Okay.
And they're 8th in Ken Palm.
They're 8th in Ken Palm. What are they in 8th? I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm going to start to get pissed off. But I agree.
You don't want to look. Just go on.
Yeah. I like the call out there. I'm going a different direction. I really like this team, and I wanted to call them out. Big Sky, Montana. They could play some basketball, man. They're 29th overall in shooting efficiency. They're 7th in the nation in field goal percentage. They're 22nd in the nation in 2-point percentage, right? So they don't really take a whole ton of threes. Defensively, they're pretty sound, forcing about 7 steals a game, middle of the pack. They rebound the ball pretty well, not great. But, I mean, they've strung together like 9 wins in a row. And if they get to shooting at a high clip from 2-point range like they are, I see them at a – what do I have them at? just for everyone to keep their eye on. I have Montana at a 13 seed. And I believe, what does that mean? A 4, Rick? Is that 13-4? Yes, 13-4. Yep. And if they get a week 4, like a A&M that hasn't looked great, or a BYU that has been inconsistent, like Montana could win that game, right? Sorry, Mike. But look out for the Big Sky, dude.
Yeah, well, and I'll cop it right now. So I have Montana as my top 14, which would mean they'd pull the worst 3 seed, which is Wisconsin, on my list. So,
yo,
it's just data points, right? It's just data points. But yeah, I also have Montana winning the Big Sky, and they've looked good. Strangely, not the favorite to win the Big Sky.
Interesting.
North Colorado is the odds-on favorite for the Big Sky. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But that's a great call out there. They've good basketball.
Yeah. Slow. It's not quick. I mean, nothing in the Big Sky is quick, right? But it's just a very methodical approach. They take smart shots, and I like the chances of teams that take intelligent shots from inside the 3-point line. I like their chances in the tournament, So, yeah. Big Sky, watch out for him. What else you got for me? Big West.
Real quick, Big West. We did a deep dive on the Big West before we got too busy to do more conferences. But UCI pretty much right where it should be. I've actually got 2 Big West teams in the tournament. I got UCI and UC Santa Barbara in the field. Been good basketball. I obviously love watching Hawaii late at night. It kind of lost some of its luster for me because it's not at midnight Central Time. It's
Fair.
It's earlier here. So like I finished a Hawaii game and I feel like I could still like read a book or something afterwards.
I should have went to see a game when I was there. We were just there, but I missed it. I'm going MAC. I chose Akron. Akron looks like the team that's going to win that, but I'm going to tune into that tournament. Because I think Miami of Ohio, shout out to Pops, who may or may not be watching this. He went to Miami of Ohio. I believe they're second in that conference right now. They're going to pull a favorable draw off the seeding, and I like their chances to potentially go for an upset here. They're very prolific on the offensive side of the ball, man. Let me just read off a couple things and then we'll move on. But effective field goal percentage, they're 36th in the nation, 35th in the nation in 3-point percentage, 55th in 2-point percentage, 52nd in field goals made per game, 42nd in threes made per game. They don't get to the line a whole bunch, which is worrisome, right? But they're 42nd in the nation in first half offense. So imagine they come out here, whether it's the Mac Turney or they pull a good seed if they end up winning, in the tourney. They come out and smack a team in the mouth as a 14 or a 15 seed. Like, I could be one of those 2-15, 3-14 upsets that we just talked about with Montana too, right? So just keep your eye on Miami of Ohio, man.
Yeah, and if you're newer to college basketball or just don't watch small conferences, the MAC plays from Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse in Cleveland, where the Cavs play. That's where their tournament is.
Yeah,
and it's the 13th through the 15th. It's the same weekend as all the big dogs, but the MAC plays their games earlier. So if you're a fan of MACtion for football, for the reason being it's the best football on TV because it's the only football on TV, MAC conference tournament basketball fits that same void. It scratches the same itch. It's like mid-afternoon, Friday, Saturday, Sunday when the big dogs aren't playing yet.
Yeah.
It's fantastic TV.
It's good basketball too. It's not bad basketball. They got some good teams in that conference, and just got a text from my dad saying "Go Red Hawks." So, go Red Hawks, baby.
All right. Marquette is going to 12-5 somebody. And sorry, Mike, if you're watching, but the way it falls out in my bracket right now, it's BYU. So Marquette was a great team early in the year. Marquette is a team who could play really, really well. Marquette is a team who is underperformed down the stretch. This was the favorite to win the Big East for big stretches. And Marquette's going to 12-5 somebody. So just be on the lookout. That is not a team I want to see on that 12 line. And depending on how seeding falls, it is not a team I would like to see play anyone I'm interested in from a betting or a rooting standpoint, because they've been playing mad lately, because they have been disrespected by the media, probably fairly, but they don't think it's fairly. And this Marquette team is going to jump up and pop somebody, I think.
I agree. I actually had them out of my top 25 for a considerable portion of the season, and they actually just crept back into mine, just given how pissed off they've looked recently. I actually have them at a 5 slot. So they're going to 12-5 somebody, but they're going to be the 5. So, my couple call-outs for me. VCU is going to be the 7 seed without winning the A10 tournament. They've looked good all season. If they don't win the tournament, they're an at-large on a 7 spot very easily. And if George Mason, like we just discussed, wins the tournament, I believe they're going to be where do I have them? Oh, a 14. So just to give you an idea of the disparity between the two teams, VCU looks real good. Watch out for Vanderbilt, man. We talked about Vanderbilt early this season. A team can play some freaking basketball, dude. Like the defensive side of the ball is not how they're going to win games, but on the offensive side of the ball, top 30 in scoring. They're top 30 in field goals made per game. They're top 30 in field goals attempted per game. They shoot a lot of free throws. I think first half scoring offense, they're 38th in the nation. They're 16th in steals. Like, this team can play some basketball, and they have some really, really big wins. They beat Tennessee, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and the Missouri team that we just so highly praised. I have Vanderbilt at a 6 slot, I believe. I probably overvaluing them a little bit, and that's okay. But if I'm a 1 through 4 seed and I pull Vandy in my bracket, I'm not trying to look ahead, but it's like the Grim Reaper being over your shoulder. Just given the resume and how they've put together this season, they got Stackhouse coaching, who is just a phenomenal basketball mind, right? Watch out for the Commodores, man. I think they're going to really make some noise this year. I believe you have them in as well.
Yeah, jump over and look at what I have highlighted right now, and I'll talk about it a little bit. When I went to rank Vanderbilt, I had a lot of trouble placing them.
Interesting.
And I put them into this group of teams I felt was very, very dangerous, but it underperformed at times. And it's New Mexico, Memphis, Illinois, UConn, Creighton, Vandy, West Virginia, Utah State, Ohio State, High Point. These are teams we've talked about a lot. Yep. These are teams who have pedigree. These are teams who recruit really well. They play really well. And they have all played, probably with the exception of New Mexico, they've all played really poorly at times this year.
Agreed.
And I am fascinated to see how this group of teams do. These are 9 through 11s, 9 through 12s, at least in my rankings.
Yep.
And I'm fascinated to see a team like Vandy come out and play the way they've played in half their games this year.
Yeah.
If we get good Vandy, I mean, that's a Sweet 16 team.
Correct. Yep.
So,
agreed.
Yeah, I'm excited to see them.
You and I think much alike. I don't want to take too much more time, but I got New Mexico and West Virginia in that same group that you just said. So I really like Vanderbilt, man. It's just a fun team to watch. They don't make too many mistakes. They're tense on defensive side of the ball. They just gotta put it together, and that's what I'm excited to see. So, what you got for me on last 4 in?
Yeah, let's go like last 4 in, first 4 out, and kind of talk about them as a group because they're kind of related, or at least they should be.
Yep.
You see them on the screen there. For me, these are teams who kind of have overperformed expectations in small spots, Utah Valley, or underperformed in tougher spots, Texas, or Nebraska GCU, who I feel like we expected a little bit more out of, and they just didn't give it to us.
Yep.
And so my first 4 out kind of mirrors that. I've Lipscomb losing their conference tournament, missing out. North Carolina's looked like shit. Boise State's played really, really well, but I expect more from Boise State. and then a Bradley team who really just kind of got the short end of the stick on a whole bunch of games, and I couldn't quite get them in.
Yeah.
But I mean, Bradley could win MVC. Like it could happen. It could happen. So those 8 teams for me. These are all real similar story,
Yeah.
and it's either doing a lot with a little or doing a little with a lot. And it was tough. So these teams that are showing, we'll talk a little bit more about our next 4 out. But for me, these 8, you could make an argument up or down for any of them, and
Yep.
I wouldn't really fight you on it because they're so polarizing and the differences in them are so minute.
Yep. Yeah. And I like the way that you balance it out. I'm going to start with my last 4 in. Essentially, for me, and the way that I think about this slot, right, is it's the conference tournament winners for the weaker end of the conferences, right? So like America East, Bryant, right? They're going to be a 16 seed. They're probably going to have a play-in game. I think for what do I have my last 4 in? Marist, SEMO, like Bucknell. I don't know. I didn't for me the last 4 in. I didn't really put too much thought in it. I thought these were the weaker of the 16 seeds based on both how they played in their conference and how their conferences stack up to my 61 through 64 slot. So that was really how I used that. I think the first 4 out is what I had a harder time with. The 2 that I did not have a hard time with was Illinois and Texas. It's funny how your last 4 in, you have Texas, and my first 4 out, Texas, right? It's funny how that we kind of mirrored each other there. They were in the AP top 10 to start the season, I think. And I think that regardless of how hard the SEC is, which it's the hardest conference in basketball, you shouldn't be outperformed by Vanderbilt and Ole Miss, right? Like that's absurd. I think Georgia has a better record than them in conference right now. Illinois, I think you have them in. I'm not going to go on a monologue like I did about a month ago. I think they're dog shit. I think they just beat didn't they just beat like Michigan by like 30 or something like that? That was kind of crazy. But I don't think they deserve to be in. Their losses are real bad. The way they play basketball is real bad. I don't care if they're first in rebounding. They don't deserve to be in. Wake Forest kind of broke my heart a little bit. I like their brand of basketball. So having them out over a team like Gonzaga, it's something that really pissed me off because I would have loved to switch those 2 teams. But again, if we're being realistic, right, like it's not happening. And Cincy, beginning of the season, we thought they were going to be the powerhouse of the Big 12, potentially behind, Houston and, Baylor, Iowa State. And they fizzled out real quick. So that was kind of my thought process. I was a little more intrigued with the first 4 out than the last 4 in, to be honest. I'm gonna refine that last 4 in, I think, as we continue to change this month, week.
Yeah, and we'll keep touching it. I was a little surprised to see Maurice on your list there. I had them 4th in the MAAC in the Metro Atlantic. So I was interested to see you put them in. We'll have to talk about that when their tournament starts next week.
To. I have them winning their conference tournament.
I mean, you'd have to. I tried to put I got the Cats in there, but I tried to put Merrimack in too. And
nice.
I couldn't
Yeah.
do it. There's only one team getting in out of the Metro Atlantic, but
who was that? Metro Atlantic. Yeah, so you got Quinnipiac. Yeah, that's good. That's a good call. I like Quinnipiac.
All right. So what you don't see on the screen, but I did want to touch on just kind of with the flow of conversation is our next 4 out.
Yep.
So I'm gonna shave off a couple here because I talked about Boise State. You have Boise State. You talked about Wake. I have Wake.
Yep.
So let's look at the other 3 we each have because I think, looking just really briefly, I'm willing to be wrong on this, and ultimately it doesn't matter, but I think the teams we each have out are the teams the other person has in the field. So mine are Georgia, Cleveland State, and Indiana all not making it. Those are my next 4 out. Georgia's obviously the big ticket item there.
Yep.
People from Indiana I know some of you are watching this show, and you would argue that maybe Indiana is a big ticket item. Fuck Indiana.
It's not a big ticket item. I have them
They
in.
have they have the stupid chair in their stadium, and like no one cares about Indiana.
Yeah.
Georgia is the big ticket item for me here.
Yeah.
We've seen Georgia play really, really well at times. Georgia has touched our top 25 at times this year.
Yep.
So for me, I couldn't get another SEC team in and chalk it up as like, oh, well, strength of schedule, right? They've played all these really good teams. They've played really close because ultimately Georgia lost more of those games than they won. So I can't get them in. Depending on how they finish the season and play in the tournament, they could really easily be a last four in for me.
Yeah.
But right now, Georgia's on the outside looking in, and they have more in common with Cleveland State than they do Alabama.
Yeah. I like your thought process there. And for me, I switched. Think about it this way: I switched Georgia for Oklahoma. You have Oklahoma in, and I have Oklahoma out. Just to give everyone an idea, Boise State, Arkansas, Xavier, and Oklahoma are my next four out. And that Oklahoma-Georgia switch is where you and I are talking, right? I think Georgia has looked better. I think they've played better teams close. Oklahoma started the season better. Big wins over U of A, big wins over Louisville, right? But Georgia also has wins over a group of the top four in the SEC right now as well, right? Mm-hmm. So I think they've displayed a better brand of basketball than Oklahoma. So that's why I had Oklahoma as my next four out. Now, Arkansas, this was purely a hatred pick, honestly, Rick. I have not been paying any attention to Arkansas basketball, but I do not think they're doing very well. When Calipari came over there, they were going to be like the best team in the SEC. They look like crap. They're bottom third of almost every statistical category. Go check it on Google. Across the board, essentially, on both offense and defense. So I don't even want to give them a second thought. Xavier hurt me a little. I was high on Xavier. I had Xavier between 30 and 25 in my top 25 pretty early on. But there's too many teams mid-major wise that are playing better basketball than Xavier and have better wins than Xavier. So though I would love to see them in, I do have them in part of my next four out. So Boise State was a weird one for me as well. They've played some freaking wild basketball recently. So they very well could win the conference tournament, and then both your first four out and my next four out could be wrong. So that's what I got.
Well, in between 42 and 52 in KenPom, Arkansas, Indiana, Oklahoma, Xavier, Boise State, Texas, Nebraska.
Yep.
So I mean, these teams are all kind of in that same boat. I think mark my words, if Xavier goes to the Big East championship game,
they'll be in.
Win or lose, they're in the field.
They're in the field. They have too many good wins. Yep.
Yeah, they're right there. I mean, they're 45th in KenPom. They're a known quantity, right? It's the same thing we talked about with the media. Like Xavier is a team people know.
They did the opposite of Oklahoma, right? They started the season like abysmally, and then like caught fire towards the end, which is what you want to do, right? Like you would rather be better towards the end of the season than towards the beginning of the season. But they were so bad at the beginning that I'm not sure they're going to be able to bounce back. But let's see what happens. I love it.
Yeah. High level Sweet 16. I think the only thing I had between 16 and 8 is VCU in the Sweet 16. I don't know if they have what it takes to go further than that. But that's all I had from a 16 level. I'll kick it over to you.
Gotcha. Wild one here. I got Tennessee bounced during the Sweet 16. I have BYU, St. John's, and McNeese all in the Sweet 16. And I have McNeese, if they get a favorable matchup, like a low-end SEC team that happens to make it to the Sweet 16. I got them going to the Elite Eight. But going to be really, really interesting.
So one call out for me rest of the way here. Well, not rest of the way, for like another 2 weeks. Clemson and Duke are interchangeable. Yep. I talk about them interchangeably. For me, whoever wins the ACC tournament is the 1 seed. The loser's like a 3.
Yep.
But that path will continue through. So in my Elite Eight, I have Clemson / Duke because I
Yeah.
truly believe they're nearly identical teams.
Yeah.
And whoever wins is going to move on. So
Yep.
that's kind of a call out for me just in my rankings how I'm talking about these teams. Clemson and Duke are interchangeable, but whoever pulls that 1 seed down, whoever wins the ACC, I have in the Elite Eight. I believe
Okay.
it will be Clemson.
Yeah.
And then my stuff's kind of gross. It's
Mine too.
really chalky.
Yeah. Mine too.
Um, and it's kind of the top. I have like Maryland, Wisconsin, and Michigan State kind of in this chunk in the middle, and any one of those teams could really easily be Purdue. I have Texas A&M and Alabama and Auburn, and Auburn is on a different level, right? Auburn's better than A&M and Alabama, but I feel like they're all kind of like a package deal. I think they're all going to kind of come through together.
Yeah.
So when I'm thinking about my Elite Eight, the one that stands out for me is Houston as the only Big 12 team in the bunch, and they've played a different kind of basketball than the Big Ten and the SEC has.
Yep. Agreed.
So I keep coming back to that. I don't think there's another Big 12 team that can sniff my Elite Eight. I know you're going to talk about Iowa State, but I think for me, what stands out about Houston is how different their game is
Yeah.
from the big conferences.
Yeah.
Where like I feel like if I plug Iowa State into the Big Ten, they could play Big Ten basketball. I think they kind of lose what makes them special in adapting. Where Houston, I feel like they're going to control the. They might lose, but they're going to control the pace of the game in a very Houston way that
agreed.
SEC and Big Ten teams haven't really seen.
Yeah. They're scary. It very well could be Houston Auburn in the national championship game, right? Like that feels like a national championship game to me. My Elite Eight is right now this week is Duke, Houston, Auburn, Iowa State, Maryland, Missouri, Michigan State, and Texas Tech. Texas Tech's kind of an oddball. I understand that, but I like their brand of basketball, and they've always been a good defensive-minded team, but they figured it out on the offensive side of the ball. Iowa State, they're healthy. They're drubbing teams right now. If someone gets hurt, they're pretty much screwed. They're not going to go anywhere. If they have their full team healthy, they are a top 30 defense and a top 50 offense, and you don't see teams like that fizzle out in the tournament very often. I think the strongest team in my Elite Eight is going to be Auburn, followed by Duke, followed by Houston, followed by Iowa State. I think that what I just named is going to be the Final Four: Duke, Houston, Auburn, Iowa State in no particular order. And then it will be Duke and Houston to the championship game. So nothing special. Again, I really do think Maryland and Missouri are well equipped to make the Elite Eight. They've proven that game by game they can be a giant slayer on both sides of the ball. And if they get to the Elite Eight, those two teams, they could very well cause havoc and get to the Final Four if they're not playing each other. So out of those 8 teams, I see Texas Tech kind of falling in and falling out a little bit. But it's interesting because we've talked about the strength of the SEC all season. And I actually believe that a Big 12 brand of basketball, to your point about Houston, right, very well could get down all the way to the Elite Eight. And currently I have 3 Big 12 teams in my Elite Eight, which might be aggressive, might not be. We'll see.
Yeah, I think the takeaway post-mortem from this season might end up being the big 3 conferences, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if we see an Elite Eight with 6 representatives from the Big Ten, the SEC, and the Big 12, I think that's really going to cast a shadow backwards on the season because we have seen down years from the Big East. We have seen down years from the ACC. Yeah. We've seen down years from Blue Bloods. We've seen down years from Kansas and Gonzaga and UNC, and so I think if we end up with an Elite Eight the way you and I are kind of thinking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
I think it's really going to provide a really easy narrative about how the season played out. And I think the more important thing is going to be in this age of NIL, what happens next? You
Yeah.
know, we see in football, the SEC and the Big Ten are going to run off and get married and leave everybody else behind. What's next for basketball? You know, the tournament is kind of this sanctified thing, and it was always 64. Well, and then it was 68, and now they're talking again about expansion. And
Yep.
you know, at what point does the SEC say, well, we have 16 teams that are better than 21 conference champions?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just, it'd be curious to see. And for that reason and that reason alone, I kind of hope that we get some of these dark horse teams in there. You know, give me something scrappy. Give me Merrimack wins the conference and goes to the Elite Eight. You know, give me something weird, because I think that's what we need to offset kind of the direction college basketball is going. And I don't think it's a bad direction. It's just not the narrative that I grew up with. It's not how I fell in love with basketball.
I agree.
And it'll probably be an awesome Elite Eight of all Big Ten and SEC teams, but
it might be.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Gonna be wild. I think we should do a graphic, like a full bracket graphic, and take picks all the way every game, from 68 down to 1. That's what I think.
Dear viewers, you know how to know that Justin doesn't do any of the graphic work or social media work, because he just requested something that's essentially a fucking PDF file that you got to download. And yeah, why not? You know what? We'll find a way to aggregate our data, and we'll rank. We'll probably have to rank out like to 90 teams, but then we could aggregate the data and we'll do a dead ball dancing bracket. How's that sound?
It sounds absolutely wonderful. Not to be confused with the selection show live that we'll be doing in a couple of weeks as well.
All right, you're just gonna pitch that one out there, huh?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That'll be I think that's 310,
316.
316.
316. Yep.
Oh yeah, it's right here in my notes.
Yep, it is.
So yeah, live selection show. It's gonna be an interesting day. That's after a busy weekend of tournaments.
Yep.
So we'll look out for that. We'll get back to our weekly cadence here. We're gonna figure out. We're not going to feed you the same top 25 because it becomes less relevant with the conversation we're having.
Correct.
So we'll give you something. It won't be this. It won't be this format, but it'll be kind of a hybrid between the two. Absolutely. As we start to talk about the things that matter, which is a lot of what you're seeing on the screen here. The 1 seeds, the last 4 in, the first 4 out. That starts to become the narrative. And you know, as much as we'd like to break college basketball media, these are the things that matter.
Agreed. And do me a favor. Please put who you think will be your number 1 seeds and who will be your champion in the comment section. Mike Peterson, I know you're watching. If you don't put a comment, you have to see me at work tomorrow, and I'm going to yell at you there. Put it in the comment section. My dad will do it. Mike will do it. Let me see what you guys got.
All right. I think that's all we have. Check out Chainlink. We're going to try to light up every single tournament game, even the lopsided ones. So if you are new to picking, normally on Chainlink we don't give you easy picks, but conference tournament specials, there's some freebies out there. Lipscomb was like a 19-point favorite today, and I think they covered. So keep an eye out for those. Chainlink is free to play. Hop on there.
Perfect.
I think that's all I have. I don't have any other notes. I think we hit literally everything that we hit.
That's all I got. I believe we missed one really good game tonight. Shoot. Sorry, before we go. Oh, it's not over yet. 59-54, Houston over Kansas. 3 minutes and 50 seconds left in the second half. Go watch it.
That was a 9.5 point spread on that game.
Yeah, well, it's not going to end that way. So.
All right.
Appreciate you guys watching, man. This was a good one. Looking forward to this season.
Watch the channel, watch the socials. We'll get some information out on the show and format, but expect to see us Monday night.
Absolutely. It was a good
Thanks
one.
for watching Dead Ball Dancing. We'll catch you next time. Peace.